Angela Rayner appeared on an ITV interview today, and honestly, it was nothing short of a disaster. As usual, she failed to provide clear answers, leaving us all frustrated. In this video, we're going to break down her responses, or lack thereof, and expose just how muddled and confusing her answers really were. Susanna Reid asked some tough questions, but unsurprisingly, Rayner dodged them with the same tired political talking points we've seen before. It's time to dive in and react to this chaotic interview. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and...
By the Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner. Were you blindsided by this decision? Good morning.
Good morning. Well, the Prime Minister set out yesterday, and I think he made it very clear that our focus, we won't be blindsided or bounced from the focus of getting peace for Ukraine with those security guarantees. The Prime Minister also set out where we've stepped up in terms of our military aid, with missiles, with the seizing of Russian assets and using that money towards support for Ukraine, and the $3 billion a year that we continue to give Ukraine for support. And the Prime Minister wants to be an honest broker, working with the US and European allies in Ukraine to bring about that peace that everybody says they want.
But what's your judgment on what the President has done, temporarily calling a halt to the billions in aid that America gives Ukraine?
Well, look, that's a matter for the US President, but what Keir outlined yesterday, the Prime Minister, was that we won't be sidetracked by that. We will be an honest broker, working with the US, working with our European allies and, importantly, supporting Ukraine to get that peace and to make sure that that peace is also backed up by security guarantees so that it's not a cessation of military action, but actually it's a lasting peace for the people of Ukraine and the security of Europe.
But with respect, Deputy Prime Minister, it's not a matter for America alone. Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, said yesterday that there won't be a lasting peace in Ukraine without America and American security guarantees. And far from security guarantees, America has stopped military aid to Ukraine. The Prime Minister wants to be a bridge. The American president blew up the bridge overnight.
Well, you're absolutely right. The Prime Minister does want to see the US and says that they are critical to lasting peace and those security guarantees. And the Prime Minister outlined, I think, very clearly in the House when he was challenged by the Lib Dems that our relationship with the US is incredibly important and will continue to be, and that he wants to be an honest broker, that he won't choose between Europe or the US. We'll work together to get that peace, and that there can be no discussions and decisions about Ukraine without Ukraine. And we stepped up and put more assistance to Ukraine, and the Prime Minister will continue to work with President Trump and our European allies and President Zelensky to get that peace and those security guarantees. So he won't give a running commentary, but he'll continue to do what he's done over the last couple of days, pick up the phone, meet with people and ensure that we can get to a position where we have the peace that everybody is saying that they want to achieve.
Can I establish then that the Prime Minister is in the process of about to pick up the phone when America wakes up to President Trump? And if he does, is he going to say, please reopen that aid pipeline?
Well, again, I won't give a running commentary of what the Prime Minister does day by day, but he's been really clear that he'll continue to have that dialogue, because dialogue is important, and the importance of our very strong relationship with the US. And I think we saw that last week when the Prime Minister met with President Trump. And, you know, he'll continue to do that, and he'll continue to work with Ukraine. You know, President Zelensky was at number 10 over the weekend, and Europe, to make sure we get that peace. And that's what the Prime Minister is focused on. He won't be bounced by particular announcements overnight. He will continue to work with our strong allies to get the peace for Ukraine and for Europe.
Can I ask you about your relationship with the Vice President, J.D. Vance? Back in November, you tweeted, good to speak to US Vice President-elect J.D. Vance. You said, we spoke about our plans for the future and how working together we build on the special relationship between our great countries. I just wondered, how's that relationship going with J.D. Vance? Are you getting on well with him still?
Well, I think the one thing that me and J.D. Vance have in common is we want to see the working class of our great nations to have more money in their pockets. The cost of living crisis has really hit people hard in the UK and in the US. You know, President Trump, alongside our Prime Minister last week, talked about a trade deal between our two countries and closer ties. I want to see that for the benefit of UK workers and workers across the US as well, to make sure that we can collaborate for the benefit of the working class of our country that I think have felt for far too long left behind, and that politics isn't working for them.
But Angela Rayner, you can't turn a blind eye to JD Vance meeting the far-right AfD party in Germany against the advice of mainstream German politicians, saying that free speech in Britain is under threat, picking the fight with Zelensky in the meeting last Friday. Can you imagine you and Keir Starmer having a meeting in Downing Street with, I don't know, some local council leader who'd come in and said he didn't want to build the homes you want, and you, as Deputy Prime Minister, speaking to them on camera in the way JD Vance spoke to Zelensky? Can you imagine that for a moment?
Well, I referenced what our Prime Minister said to JD Vance around free speech. We're very proud of free speech in the UK. And, you know, we can have robust discussions. And I think President Trump has also acknowledged that Keir and himself come from very different sides of the political spectrum, but we have a lot in common.
So have you had a robust discussion with JD Vance? Have you had a robust discussion with him about meeting the AfD?
Well, again, I'm not going to go into dialogue that I have with JD Vance, but what I have said is I want to see our close relationship with the US have benefits for both US workers and UK workers. For far too long, people have felt like they're in insecure work, they can't pay the bills, life has got really difficult for them. I want the economy that works for them. That's why we're tabling amendments to the Employment Rights Bill today to give workers better security. And I want to collaborate with the US where we have got common ground that will benefit UK workers as well as support US workers as well.
I want to ask you a question that is a point that is being put repeatedly by viewers this morning, and it's summed up by Lisa on Facebook. Good, she says, in response to what President Trump has done. Now the UK needs to do the same and put money where it's really needed. Pensioners, disabled, kids, NHS. People watching will see energy bills go up, food inflation up, winter fuel allowance cut. They might also be asking, we're about to put billions of extra into this war, and is it time to consider whether President Trump has a point?
Well, first of all, it's not either or. I think the Prime Minister outlined he made some very difficult decisions around where the money was going to come from for our defence, and this is important, it's about our defence of the UK. And that's why we increased our defence spending and the difficult decision to take money out of the overseas aid budget. We've invested huge sums of money into provision for children with special educational needs. Councils have had the biggest amount of increase, a real cash terms increase of around 7% from this government, recognising the austerity that the previous government gave them. Pensioners are better off than they were under the Tories because of inflation was at 11.2% at one point, which of course hits pensioners the worst. And we will put money and investment into our NHS to bring down those waiting lists, and we're already seeing some results. I appreciate that people are angry and fed up because they feel the cost of living and the pinch. The government has had 7 months so far, and we're already getting on with that piece of work because we know that's important. Okay. But the most important job of any government is to keep its citizens safe, and that's why we've put that spending into defence, and that's why the Prime Minister has spent a lot of time working with our allies across the US and Europe to bring about that peace.
What's your thoughts on Angela Rayner's handling of questions regarding the UK's support for Ukraine? Given the complexities of the geopolitical situation and the ongoing debates about military aid, her responses have certainly been under scrutiny. Especially after the U.S. decision to suspend its military assistance, Rayner's approach to these questions has faced criticism, with some feeling her answers lack clarity and substance. How do you think she's managed this issue in interviews and public statements?